About last week where he has played a little bit better. What a pass by Rondo.
That might be the dagger.
Why not? Why can't I be the MVP of the league? Why can't I be the best player in the league?
The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles. The LA Lakers, the 2010 NBA champions.
Iconic. The title says iconic. That does not mean every single shot they made us ooh and ah throughout the 2010s. Not every single cross, not everything that sticks out. Iconic. The shots that 20 years from now are still going to be being replayed on NBA TV, assuming the planet is still around by then, of course. Today I am ranking the 15 most iconic baskets throughout the 2010s, and I did this with some of your help on Twitter. Thank God, because when I put this list together myself, I had only gotten to 8 and I would have gotten toasted for leaving some of these shots off. Trust me, you'd be surprised how difficult it is to remember things throughout an entire decade just off the top of your head. So if you ever want to help with the 2010s list, make sure to follow me on Twitter, links in the comment section and description. And without further ado, this is my ranking for the 15 most iconic shots of the 2010s.
Hurting, but the Lakers down by 2 and they want him and need him at the free throw line. Got it.
Yeah, not backpedaling or whatever you have to do to get to the other end. If in fact he gets to the other end before a foul,
Made him. Lakers might foul. They might foul to get him out of the game.
They have to.
Yeah.
This pair of free throws does make this list, and of course it has to be at 15 because they're damn free throws, but at the end of the day, or the decade in this case, they are iconic nonetheless. This for me really signified the end of Kobe Bryant's career, his illustrious career. He was quite possibly having his best season in 2013. He was leaving absolutely everything on the floor as he always had, except it was a bit different this time because the team was struggling and he was getting older. And him getting up with a torn Achilles to walk to the free throw line under his own power and to shoot the free throws because he knew his team needed them, it almost doesn't get any more iconic than that, in terms of free throws anyways. Kobe went on to tell the story that when he was on the ground, he was actually trying to roll his Achilles back up so he could continue to play. He knew the Achilles was gone, but he wanted to finish the game because this was at the very end of the season and they're fighting for the 8th seed, and when he could not accomplish that, the least he could do was shoot his free throws to give his team a boost, and to eventually go on to win the game. There's just a lot of symbolism here. Whether you're a fan of Kobe or not, you cannot question his heart, you cannot question his dedication to the game, his passion, all of which were exhibited in this moment. Him limping off the floor is also very symbolic because that was quite literally the last time we saw the Kobe Bryant we were used to. It's an iconic moment and it will no doubt have its fair share of replays throughout the 2020s and beyond.
We'll get a chance to take the lead and look who has the ball. With half a minute to play, Bryant for the lead. Yes! Kobe Bryant gives the Lakers the lead.
The final shot of Kobe Bryant's career, the very poetic jumper that gave him his 58th point, 58th in his last game. Of course, the last 2 being free throws, which was really crazy considering his career started with free throws. However, the shot itself is self-explanatory. From the time that Kobe Bryant tore his Achilles to this last game, which was about a 3-year span, it was nothing but struggle. It was nothing but tearing down the image we had seen of Kobe all the years before. It was a very gruesome ending to his career. So when we got to his last game and he was able to put on a Kobe-esque performance just one more time, the lead up was perfect. It was a close game, it was time for Kobe to be clutch again, and this wasn't just some jump shot, it was a clutch shot, the very final shot of his career. Oh, and by the way, that was basically the game winner. The Lakers were down by 1 point, he got straight to his spot, and reminded us all just one more time why we called him the Black Mamba.
And with 3 seconds left, Cleveland triggers in. James, 2 seconds, 1 second for the win! Oh! LeBron James delivers!
It's going to be James.
Here it is. See, it's under
3 seconds to go. Throws up the floater. Good night, Cleveland. That is for you.
I I chose to do LeBron's game winners against Toronto and Indiana as a 2-for-1 because they kind of prove the same point. They're kind of iconic for the same reason. First of all, they came directly in the midst of his very iconic 2018 playoff run, which statistically could be called the greatest playoff run of all time if you looked at it. And during that year, if you remember, it was the one time that we could have fathomed LeBron James losing in the Eastern Conference basically throughout the entire 2010s. He was quite possibly going to go home against a very subpar Indiana team in the first round, so that game winner came during a pivotal Game 5, and with the way that the momentum and the series was going, if Indiana had been able to take a 3-2 lead back to their home court, who knows if the Cavaliers would have been able to regroup and recover. We know LeBron would have, but it was a question of his team at that point because this was probably the worst LeBron team kind of since the decade had started. And then the one against Toronto. This was epic because LeBronto was supposed to be over. Kyrie was gone, the Cavaliers were a much worse squad than they had been in previous years, and this was probably the best DeMar DeRozan Raptors team throughout the LeBronto era. So not only did he completely dominate the Raptors, but he hit this running game winner to put them up 3-0, which came after the Cavaliers taking both of the Raptors home games. Considering the circumstances and the way LeBron was able to perform in both of these series and just that year's playoffs overall, these are 100% iconic moments.
Finds Rose. Rose trying to get open, fires away. Bang! It's over! The Bulls win at the buzzer! 1.5 remaining. James for the win. It's gone! LeBron James at the buzzer! Stuns the Chicago Bulls, and the series is tied at 2 games apiece.
Yet again a 2-for-1 because these are nearly iconic for the same reason, or you know, they're just so related that it does not make sense to split them up. D Rose and LeBron had traded game winners in 2015, and for Rose this was such an iconic moment because it felt like the waiting was finally over. By this point he had been injured multiple times. We were starting to come to grips with the fact that he was never truly going to be the same D Rose that had won the MVP, yet here he was in the playoffs taking a 2-1 lead against LeBron James, who was then searching for his 4th or 5th straight NBA Finals appearance. And since that was just game 3, the Chicago Bulls had another home game, so they could have easily went up 3-1. That's when LeBron James turned around and hit his game winner to all but save the Cavaliers. The Bulls were good that year. A lot of people don't remember, but they had a legitimate chance at an NBA Finals berth. A lot of people believe if they would have beaten the Cavaliers, they could have very possibly went on to play the Warriors that year. But LeBron's game winner knotted the series up at 2 and eventually allowed them to go on to win the series. I don't recall a playoff series in recent memory where there were 2 teams and their best players hit game winners back to back. I don't know if that's ever happened. Oh, by the way, on that LeBron shot, David Blatt had originally drawn up that play for LeBron to inbound the basketball. I'm not sure where the decision comes from in a tied game to have LeBron James, possibly the greatest player ever, to inbound the basketball. Who knows where that came from, but LeBron scrapped it and he just might be a better coach than most.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! With 0.6 of a second remaining.
This moment still gives me chills. I remember where I was, who I was talking to, my reaction. Steph Curry's 3 against the Oklahoma City Thunder in what should be called the ankle game. I don't know why that name never stuck, but it was because he came back during that game with an ankle injury, and of course we all know that his ankle is his kryptonite, so it looked pretty bad when it happened, and he came back and he was just hitting some of the toughest shots that I'd ever seen on that night. This shot came in the year in which he totally changed the game. He was already a great shooter, already an MVP, but he came into that year and he started pulling from the logo, started pulling from multiple feet behind the line off the dribble, and so as he crosses the half-court line on this play and he sizes up the defense and takes a pull-up 3, yeah, nobody will ever forget this shot. It was not just a 3-pointer, it was the type of 3 that was becoming commonplace from him in a year where we hadn't seen it before him. It really signified how he was changing the game in that exact year. And I advise you to go watch this play on your own time and just look at the reaction on the players, specifically the Thunder players. They were shell-shocked.
Pierce for 3. It's good. Paul Pierce from way downtown. And Boston leads by 4.
Pierce's 3 over LeBron is an iconic shot that would have been made more iconic if the Celtics would have come out with the series victory. So then of course that begs the question, why is this on the list? And it's because what was going on at the time. The Heat still hadn't won a championship, the Celtics had all but fallen apart by that point, everybody was injured, Jeff Green, Avery Bradley, Ray Allen was dealing with ankle issues, yet the Celtics with this shot were 1 win away from the NBA Finals. And all the chatter that had happened after that about the Miami Heat possibly breaking up and the scrutiny that LeBron James was already facing in 2011 about to be multiplied by 10 if you can believe it. I think that this shot actually helped trigger what came after it, which was possibly LeBron James' greatest performance ever. Just when it looked like the Celtics had once again bested LeBron, he basically came back the next game and beat them until they were blue. But nobody is ever going to forget this series, nobody is going to forget what it meant, nobody is ever going to forget what LeBron James did or why he did it, which is why nobody will ever forget this shot.
Incredible opportunity. Durant for 3. It's good. Kevin Durant from downtown. And Golden State takes the lead. And they should get a 2 for 1 here.
I like Durant. He says, I don't need a screen. Let me play one-on-one against LeBron. Now Hood picks him up on the switch. Shot clock at 5. Kevin Durant way outside. Delivers! Kevin Durant from downtown. It's a 6-point game. That's the same spot he had it in Game 3 last year.
Kevin Durant's 3 over LeBron James in the 2017 NBA Finals. This could have been another 1A and 1B type thing with 2017 and 2018, but by 2018 it just felt like such a bad series, such a lopsided series because it was the worst LeBron team against one of the best teams ever. But in 2017 you had 2 teams where at least the Cavaliers had the talent to fake you out and think they could compete. But the reason that this moment ranks so low with its number 9 standing is because when Kevin Durant and LeBron James played in the 2012 finals, you knew that eventually, or at least you thought that one day when he was older, Kevin Durant would get the best of LeBron James. It wasn't meant to be in 2012. The Heat were a better team, LeBron was on a mission, it just was what it was. But this shot, with Kevin Durant in a Golden State jersey, it almost looks photoshopped, because this was not how Kevin Durant was supposed to have gotten the better of LeBron James. It was not supposed to be in a situation that nobody was respecting, a situation that he himself probably didn't respect. It just felt so manufactured because the Warriors winning that title was a foregone conclusion the day KD signed with them. Nevertheless, a clutch shot in the finals is a clutch shot in the finals, especially with 2 players of this caliber, and it brought the series to 3-0 as opposed to the 2-1 it might have been if he had not hit this shot. Oh yeah, and the Warriors were down 2 at that time, so there was a lot on the line. Missing that shot could have very well have meant the end of the game.
A 3 wins the series. It's Lillard. He got the shot off. Lillard, good! And the Blazers win the series for the first time in 14 years.
Oh my goodness. The Lillard game winner against the Rockets. That was his 2nd year in the NBA and his first ever playoff series. In his first ever playoff series, he hits a series clinching buzzer beater. And there really hasn't been a question about this kid at the end of games since. What people don't remember about the Blazers-Rockets series is that the Rockets were a good team in 2014. As a matter of fact, they had home court advantage in this series. And Portland was down too, so if Lillard did not make this shot, they were going back to Houston for a Game 7 at a time where they had previously held a 3-1 lead. There was a great chance that a Game 7 in Houston would have spelled the end of that playoff run for Portland. But everything about this moment was just gorgeous. 9/10 of a second on the clock, Lillard not shying away from the moment at all, clapping for the ball, literally dashing for the moment. It's hard to believe he could ever one-up this, right? Wow, one of the most scathing, disrespectful moments in NBA history, and yet iconic at the same time. Lillard's goodbye 3 to the Thunder is so much more epic now than it was when it happened, now that we know what actually ended up happening. First of all, Lillard and Westbrook already had a history of chatter. We have the screen grab of Westbrook telling Lillard he's been busting his ass for years, and that's cool and all because trash talk is great. It's great to see these players compete and have a rivalry, but there's certain things that come with the territory. Lillard responded not by talking, not with words, but with one of the coldest game winners in history, and it was a series clinching game winner. He then waved goodbye to the Oklahoma City Thunder, probably specifically Westbrook. He then created a meme. And then during the summer, the Thunder completely broke up. They went into a rebuild. This place where Westbrook had just re-signed not too long ago on a long-term deal. Lillard pretty much played the biggest role in sending this team back to a rebuild. He kind of initiated the rebuild. Yeah, given the situation, circumstances, and what ended up happening, I don't know if we're ever going to see anything like this again. It was just a perfect storm.
James over Pierce. That might be the dagger.
This is a very underrated shot, but I have it so high on my list because it was the first time that LeBron James had finally dealt with the Celtics. If you remember that mini run that he went on at the end of Game 5 where just nothing could go wrong, I'm talking he was stealing the ball, dunking, hitting jumpers. But this three-pointer, we didn't know it at the time, but it was literally the end of his woes with the Celtics. He would never lose to them again. And it was such a big thing for him to have hit that shot and not Mario Chalmers or somebody. It was in the midst of him scoring 10 straight points to put Boston away, just so symbolic in every way that you could think of. This was the three that officially put the game out of reach. That's why I chose this one instead of the one that he hit right before it. And you could seriously tell how much it meant for him if you look at the way he was looking at the camera after that shot. He just stood there condescendingly breathing like I wish a Celtic would. Yeah, this is highly underrated because when you think of LeBron in 2011, you think of the Mavs series, you don't think of this. But him getting rid of the Celtics finally, and especially with this run and this shot, I would say it's one of the more iconic moments in the 2010s that maybe we won't even see replayed over and over again just because of what happened in the NBA Finals. Nevertheless, definitely iconic.
Bryant looking. Artest, that's a three. Bang! Lakers by 6 with a minute to play.
If you remember anything about Game 7 of the 2010 Finals, then you know Ron Artest quite literally may have saved the Lakers here. At the end of this game, the Celtics went on a relentless tear of hitting tough threes after not hitting a shot pretty much the entire fourth quarter. Points were very hard to come by, the Celtics were clearly on their tails, and they were only down by 3. With Boston gaining momentum, Ron Artest was the one that hit the dagger. Because although it was still competitive after this and the Celtics still could have come back, it really took the wind out of Boston. If this shot hadn't missed, according to what happens next, the game would have been tied. But the fact that they had a 6-point deficit to make up with so little time left, as opposed to the 3 they would have had, he hit the biggest shot of the game and yeah, probably the series. Also, this was a Lakers and Celtics series, so it just added to the lore of the rivalry. This was the second time they'd seen each other in 3 years. There was a lot on the line here, namely Kobe's legacy, and a lot of the Lakers as well, because this would have been the second time the Celtics beat them in 3 years, so you would have been able to outright say Boston owned them that era. It took some serious stones to even have thought about taking this shot, and he nailed it.
Time to get set and knock it down.
A long three for Thompson, and that is an NBA record. His 10th three-pointer of the night.
There was about a million Klay Thompson threes I could have chosen from Game 6 against the Thunder in 2016, but I chose the one at this mark because if you look at the score, it was the three-pointer that kept Golden State within striking distance. And it was at a time where points were getting really hard to come by for them, they were on Oklahoma's home floor, it was the fourth quarter, so they very easily could have been going home. And this was also probably the toughest shot he took that night. Multiple feet behind the three-point line, Westbrook was in his sight, but he drops this three, and it is a part of one of the more iconic performances of the decade, so it's not just this shot. But I choose this shot because, being that it keeps them in the game, being that they go on to win that game in the series, we know the domino effect of the Golden State Warriors beating the Oklahoma City Thunder that year. It's very likely that the events that have transpired over the last 2 or 3 years would have never happened if it was not for this performance. The Thunder winning that series puts them in the NBA Finals after having disposed of a 73-win team in the conference finals. If all of that happens, win or lose that year's finals, he still got a very compelling case to stay with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Yeah, so in other words, if Klay Thompson misses this extremely difficult shot and the Thunder go down and score and keep the momentum, the NBA would have been interesting for the last 3 years. Taking just a couple of liberties there, but you get the point.
7 to shoot. Nowitzki drives, goes underneath, lefty layup, banks it in with 3.6 remaining. Miami out of timeouts, trailing by 2. James back to Wade. Wade puts it up for the win. Off the mark, and Dallas has tied the finals with one of the most incredible comebacks in NBA Finals history.
And to me, I think that's the way they should play.
Nowitzki puts it up, puts it in. Dirk Nowitzki makes it a 10-point game. Timeout, Miami.
So somehow the Dirk Nowitzki shots from 2011 were deleted out of my notes, and I didn't realize until the very last minute, so I had to slide this in here as 4A. There was no way I was going to drop a video about iconic shots and just accidentally forget these and pretend it wasn't that big of a deal. No. Dirk's layup to seal the comeback in game 2, and then the final dagger when they were already up by 10, but it's still the shot that you remember against Chris Bosh. Yeah, both of these have to be here. As it pertains to the layup, that was the start of this being a competitive series, because game 1 they were blown out, and in game 2 they were on the path to getting blown out until the comeback. Dirk went on to seal that victory, which was a momentum changing victory, and it was a precursor to what he was going to do for the rest of the series. The shot against Bosh was a dagger, and although Dallas was already up by like 10 points at the time, it was the shot that truly sucked all the wind out of the building. It was the shot that made it known there was going to be no comeback, that Dallas was going to maintain the lead in the last few minutes of the game, and the reason it's so iconic is because it's Dirk's one-legged fader, the one that he had become famous for many years before this. And so to seal the championship off with his signature move, that is the very definition of iconic. It would have been like Kareem winning a championship with a skyhook. It is like LeBron sealing a championship with his iconic chase down block. There is nothing better than a superstar finishing off a championship series with his signature play, and that's why I rank this so high.
It's off to Leonard, defended by Simmons. Is this the dagger? Oh! Game! Series! Toronto has won!
Aside from this shot being iconic, it just put the cap on proving that Kawhi Leonard was an android. There was seriously no other way to explain his stats that series, his performance. It was the clincher on what may have been the greatest individual series performance since LeBron James against the Magic in 2009. We don't know what would have happened in overtime of this game, but since we know how history unfolded, this shot sent them to the conference finals, which then sends them to their first NBA championship ever. It's the only walk-off Game 7 buzzer beater in NBA history, and it couldn't have been more epic. It was guarded heavily, it bounced around the rim. This shot is straight from a movie script. Legend has it that if you're a Sixers fan, this is due to be the last thing you see before you pass away. For the rest of us, we can just guarantee we will see this shot at least 10,000 more times before the end of our lives.
And they're putting Curry in the pick and roll, trying to get him on Irving.
Irving and Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good. Kyrie Irving from downtown.
Do I need to tell this story again? 3-1 comeback, Game 7 on Golden State's home floor, being guarded by the unanimous MVP and possible best player in the league at the time. This shot just has so much going for it that you can almost put this as 1A and 1B with number 1, which I'm sure you've already figured out number 1. But it is really the build up to the shot that makes it so iconic. It's the type of build up that I just don't know if we're ever going to have again, because it has a lot to do with the best player in the NBA, which is LeBron James. Had a lot to do with his legacy and how he was slowly being, or not slowly, but rather quickly being replaced by Steph Curry that year. People were trying to move on from LeBron and forget about him. It was Golden State's time, it was a new era. The Chicago Bulls record has been broken. The 2015 finals that LeBron James did everything in his power to have won. Coming up to this rematch where he had a healthy team and it just didn't seem like it was gonna happen. This is that once in a lifetime type build-up. I don't even know if the last 3 years of Golden State success has washed away this memory. I would have hated to be a Warriors fan this day.
James catches, puts up a three. Won't go. Rebound Bosh. Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang! Tie game with 5 seconds remaining.
I would have hated to be a Spurs fan this day. The San Antonio Spurs had the game won. Oh, you know what? I don't even want to do this to Spurs fans. I don't want to do this. I don't want to tell this story again. It's brutal. It is brutal. The reason that I rank this number 1 over Kyrie's shot is because if Kyrie misses, there is still a chance for the Cavaliers to win that game. If Ray Allen misses this shot, game is likely over. The game was tied in Golden State, the Miami Heat were down here, and this was just Ray Allen doing what he had practiced to do his entire time in the NBA. He even has a story in his book of how he used to train for a moment specifically like this. Oh, also, if you take a look at this picture, Chris Smoove is in the photo. What are the chances? This play had the greatest shooter of all time, possibly the greatest player of all time, maybe the greatest coach of all time, and the greatest 2K YouTuber of all time, all present in the same place. It really does not get more iconic than this. And those are my rankings. Those are what I would rank the 15 most iconic shots of the 2010s. Remember the difference between iconic and disrespectful. I saw some people responding to the tweet and they were putting like crosses and tough shots. Everything that was just filthy was not iconic. I believe this is the list, but if you think differently, make sure to leave so in the comment section. Make sure to hit the like button and sub if you enjoyed, and hit the bell next to my name if you want notifications when the next 2010s list drops. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.